The house at Godric's Hollow was rubble. Albus Dumbledore stood amid the wreckage, with his silver hair catching the cold November wind, his eyes stripped of their usual warmth. He had spent the better part of the evening confirming what he already suspected, and now the confirmation settled over him like frost. Hagrid had already gone, carrying the baby south toward a small house on a quiet street in Surrey, where Petunia Dursley waited with all the warmth of a closed door. Dumbledore had explained the necessity to Minerva McGonagall, who had argued against it with characteristic directness, and then accepted his reasoning. Blood protection, ancient magic. The love Lily Potter had poured into the sacrifice of her own life could only be anchored to blood, and Petunia was all that remained, except that something else was anchored there too. Dumbledore crouched in the debris and pressed 2 fingers to the scorched earth. He closed his eyes and listened, the way only a wizard of his age and ability could listen, filtering the residual magic the way a river filters silt. There was Lily's sacrifice, vast and luminous even in its aftermath. There was the dark crater where Voldemort's curse had rebounded, and there, threaded through everything like a seam of gold in stone, was something else. A second magical signature, faint and unformed, resonating with Lily's protection in a way that should not have been possible at all. He followed the thread. It led him north and east, toward a county he had no particular reason to visit, toward a child who had not yet done a single magical thing in her short life and probably wouldn't for several years. But the resonance was unmistakable. Whoever this child was, her magic and Harry Potter's were already speaking to one another across a distance of 40 miles, drawn together by some quality of compatibility he had never encountered in all his years of study. He apparated to his office at Hogwarts and began searching the records of unregistered magical children. It did not take long. Born in a year gutted by fear and Voldemort's shadow, the list of Muggle-born witches and wizards expected to receive letters in a decade's time was mercifully short. One name caught his attention and held it: Hermione Jean Granger. Born the 19th of September 1979, to Daniel and Emma Granger of Crawley, Sussex. 2 parents with doctorates, no magical ancestry detected in any branch of the family tree, and a magical signature that Dumbledore's long-distance analysis described as extraordinary, which was not a word he reached for casually. He sat with the idea for a long time. Then he went to Surrey first, because he believed in thoroughness. Petunia Dursley answered her door in a housecoat, looked at him with an expression that could have curdled milk, and informed him in a voice like a snapping twig that she would not be taking the boy, that she wanted nothing to do with freakishness of any kind, that her sister had chosen that world and died in it, and that was nothing to do with her family. And then she closed the door. Dumbledore stood on the doorstep for a moment. Then he smiled, very slightly, in the direction of the closed door. "Thank you, Petunia," he said quietly. "You have given me permission to try something I have never tried before." He apparated to Crawley. The Granger house had a red door and a garden that had been cared for with patient attention. Someone had planted lavender along the front path and kept the edges neat even in November. Dumbledore approved. He knocked at 9 in the evening, which was not his finest moment in terms of timing, but the matter felt urgent. The man who opened the door was in his early 30s, with the look of someone who solved problems for a living, and was mildly surprised to find one on his doorstep. He took in Dumbledore's purple robes and silver hair with polite wariness. "My name is Albus Dumbledore. I am the headmaster of a school called Hogwarts. I am here to speak with you about your daughter Hermione, and about a rather unusual proposal." Dan Granger studied him for a moment, then stepped aside to let him in. 30 minutes later, both Dan and Emma Granger sat in their sitting room with untouched cups of tea growing cold on the coffee table between them. Dumbledore had turned their teapot into a tortoise and back again to establish credibility. They had not stopped him. They were that kind of people, which he found encouraging. Their daughter was a witch. Magic was real. There existed an entire society of magical people living alongside the ordinary world, and the man sitting in their armchair wanted to place a magical orphan in their care. He believed that the love-based protection surrounding this child could be adapted to work through chosen family rather than blood, because their daughter's magical signature was harmonically aligned with the boy's in ways he had never encountered before. Emma Granger had the kind of mind that processed the impossible by examining it from every angle before accepting it. She waited until he had finished, then asked her questions in the order they occurred to her. Let me make sure I understand. You want us to adopt a 15-month-old boy whose parents were murdered by a dark wizard. He has protective magic that requires love and family to function. And you believe placing him with our daughter would create a magical bond between them. If you were to adopt Harry, to truly and freely choose him as your son, I believe the protection could be powered by chosen family just as powerfully as by blood. It has never been attempted before, but the magical theory is sound. And if it doesn't work, Dan asked, then Harry would still have a loving home, which is more than he would have had in Surrey. But I believe it will work. I believe these two children are meant to be in each other's lives. They had been trying for a second child for 2 years. It had been quiet, that trying, and a little painful in the way that unexplained absences always are. Now this elderly wizard in purple robes was offering them a son who needed them, and something in her chest had already moved toward the idea before she had consciously decided to let it. "Can we see him?" she asked. Dumbledore smiled with a warmth that was entirely unstrategic. "I was hoping you would ask." The safe house was a cottage 15 miles outside London. Hagrid sat in the sitting room occupying most of it, and in his enormous arms, looking very small and very serious, was Harry Potter. He was 15 months old, with a shock of black hair that stood at several angles simultaneously. His eyes, when he looked up at the sound of the door, were a green so bright it seemed almost structural. On his forehead, barely visible beneath his fringe, was a lightning bolt scar. Emma took him carefully. Babies did not generally appreciate strangers, but Harry looked at her with those extraordinary eyes and after a moment of careful assessment, reached up and touched her face with one small hand. "Hello," Emma whispered. "Hello, Harry." Dan leaned in and Harry transferred his attention to this new person, studying him with the same serious concentration. Then, unexpectedly, he smiled. The room shifted in a way that could not be measured, but that Dumbledore felt in the way he felt most things, as a warmth in the bones of the world. "We'll take him," Dan said, his voice thick. "If there's a real chance of keeping him safe and giving him a family, we'll take him." Dumbledore laid out his conditions carefully. They must know the full truth about why Harry's parents had died. He would need to place a Fidelius charm on the house and adapt the blood wards to recognize chosen family. They must raise Harry knowing his history. And finally, they must love him genuinely, not from obligation or pity, but as freely and completely as they loved Hermione. Because without that love, the protection would be nothing more than theory. "Can you offer him that?" Dumbledore asked. Dan and Emma looked at the small boy who had stolen their hearts in 3 minutes, and answered together without hesitation. Yes. The legal paperwork took 2 weeks. The protection enchantments took another. On a cold November night, Dumbledore stood in the Granger garden and cast the final adapted ward, his wand moving in intricate patterns of intent and will. Golden light sank into the house's foundations like water into earth, and for a moment the whole building glowed softly from within. And then it was just a house again on a quiet street in Sussex. "It's done," he said. "Harry Potter is now Harry Granger, protected by love, living in a home that Voldemort's followers will never find." Emma stood in the doorway holding 2 children at once, a 2-year-old girl with serious brown eyes and a 15-month-old boy with a lightning scar, and felt something settle in her chest that she would carry for the rest of her life. The particular and irreversible certainty that your family is complete. "Thank you," she told Dumbledore, "for trusting us with him." "Thank you," he replied, "for proving that family is always a choice. You have given Harry something his parents would have wanted above everything else, a chance to grow up loved." Hermione Jean Granger had been an only child for 2 years and 4 months. Then her parents brought home a baby brother, and her world reorganized itself around him as naturally as water finding a new course. "His name is Harry," Emma explained, kneeling beside Hermione with the baby in her arms. "He's going to live with us now. He's your brother." Hermione studied the baby with the concentrated attention she brought to everything interesting. "Baby," she said. "Yes, your baby brother." Hermione reached out carefully and patted Harry's hand. Harry grabbed her finger and held on. Hermione looked at her mother. "Mine," she said decisively. "Yes, sweetheart. Yours." From that moment, Hermione took her role with absolute seriousness. She helped choose his clothes each morning, her color coordination creative at best. She read him stories from picture books, narrating elaborate tales that had nothing to do with the actual text. She insisted on sitting beside his high chair at mealtimes. When Harry cried, Hermione would appear and pat his head and say in a voice of complete authority, "It's okay, Harry. My own is here." It worked. Harry would calm almost immediately when Hermione was close. Dan and Emma also noticed something that went beyond normal sibling attunement. When Hermione was upset, Harry would crawl toward her before she made a sound. When Harry was hungry, Hermione would go to the kitchen and point at his bottles. They developed a private language of gestures and sounds that their parents could not always decode, a communication that seemed to bypass words entirely. "It's like they're connected," Dan observed one afternoon when the children were 3 and 2. Hermione suddenly looked up from her book, said something in their private language, and Harry immediately abandoned his blocks and crawled to her. They both started giggling at something only they understood. "Dumbledore said they were magically compatible," Emma reminded him. Maybe this is what he meant. The first significant magical incident occurred when Hermione was 4 and Harry was 3. They had been playing in the garden, and Hermione had climbed too high in the oak tree, higher than she intended, and then the branch shifted, and she was falling. Time seemed to slow. Harry screamed her name and threw his hands up, and Hermione stopped in mid-air. She hung there for one impossible moment, and then drifted down gently to the grass, as though someone were lowering her by a thread. Both children stared at each other in silence. Then Harry started crying from relief and terror, and Hermione ran to him and wrapped her arms around her younger brother and held him while he shook. "You saved me," she said, her voice full of wonder. "Harry, you saved me." "Didn't want you hurt," he managed, through tears. Dumbledore arrived that evening, listened to their account, and smiled with the specific brightness of a man whose most important theory has just been proven correct. Their magic is responding to each other. Harry's protective instinct triggered his power. This is advanced magic for a 3-year-old. Usually accidental magic is random, emotional, unpredictable. Harry's had purpose. He saw his sister in danger, and his power answered. Over the following years, Hogwarts staff paid occasional visits. McGonagall came twice a year, precise and patient. Flitwick taught them meditation techniques. Hagrid arrived with impractical gifts and stories about magical creatures that kept both children awake past bedtime in the best possible way. It was Dumbledore who visited most often, sitting with both children and answering their increasingly sophisticated questions with the care of someone planting seeds he intended to see flower. Harry asked about his scar when he was 5. "Your birth parents loved you very much," Dumbledore said gently. "But there was a very bad wizard who wanted to hurt you. Your mother used a kind of magic that is older than almost anything I have ever studied. She gave her life to protect yours, and the scar is the mark of that protection. It means you survived something impossible because your mother loved you enough to make it impossible. Where are they now? My birth parents. They died protecting you. I am very sorry, Harry, but they made certain you would be safe. They made certain you would have a family." He gestured at Dan, Emma, and Hermione. This family. Harry absorbed this quietly. Then he reached over and took Hermione's hand. "Good," he said. "I like this family." "I like you in our family," Hermione said, with the loyalty of a child who has decided something important and will not be moved from it. "You're my brother." "Forever," Harry agreed. By the time they were 6 and 7, their distinct personalities had settled into something that looked, from the outside, like opposite poles, and felt from the inside like two halves of the same thought. Hermione was structured and precise, a child who read encyclopedias for pleasure and approached every problem by first understanding its theoretical framework. When she wanted to know something, she researched it until she had mastered it, and then she wanted to know the next thing. Harry was intuitive and physical, a child who learnt by doing rather than reading, who made spectacular mistakes with the cheerful confidence of someone who expected to figure it out eventually. He was also fiercely protective in a way that went beyond ordinary sibling loyalty. It was almost reflexive, a thing that operated before thought could catch up with it. The second significant magical incident happened when Hermione was 6 and Harry was 5. They were in their room discussing whether it was possible to deliberately make things fly, and Hermione had proposed an experiment. We could hold hands and both concentrate on the same thing at once. They held hands and stared at a small toy broomstick Dumbledore had given Harry. They concentrated with the shared intensity of two children who have decided to want something very much. The broomstick shot upward, hit the ceiling hard enough to leave a mark, ricocheted off 2 walls, and settled gently on the floor. Both children stared at it, then at each other. Then they started laughing with the helpless laughter of people who have done something they didn't entirely mean to do and can't quite believe worked anyway. "We did magic," Hermione said. "Real magic. Together." "What was that noise?" Emma called from downstairs. "Nothing," they said together, and dissolved into fresh giggles. After that, they began experimenting carefully in the private hours. They tried to move small objects, change the colors of things, make flowers bloom out of season. They could not always control it. But when they worked together, when they both wanted precisely the same thing at precisely the same moment, the results were consistent in a way that neither could produce alone. "We're properly magic," Harry said one evening, lying in bed with the star-shaped nightlight casting its yellow circle on the ceiling. "We always were," Hermione replied from across the room. "Dumbledore said so. But Harry, we have to be careful. We're not supposed to do magic around people who don't know about it. Only around family. So I can always do magic around you. I'm always going to be your family, even when we're old. Promise, promise. You're my favorite person. You're mine too," she said. "Forever." They fell asleep with the certainty of two people who have decided something permanent and mean every word of it. When Hermione turned 7 and Harry turned 6, Dan and Emma sat both children down and told them everything. Hogwarts, the Ministry of Magic, the Statute of Secrecy, and then, carefully and completely, Harry's full history. "You were born Harry James Potter," Emma said, holding his hand. "Your birth parents were James and Lily Potter. They were killed by a dark wizard named Voldemort when you were 15 months old. The scar on your forehead is from that night." Harry touched it. "This is from Voldemort." "Yes, but you need to understand something important. Voldemort was destroyed when his curse failed. He can't hurt you. You are safe. You are our son. Why did he want to hurt me? We don't know all the details. Dumbledore says you'll learn the full story when you're older. What matters now is that you survived. You're here." Harry was quiet. Then he looked at Hermione. "Did you know?" "Not all of it," she admitted. "But Harry, it doesn't change anything." "I know," he said. "I just wanted to hear you say it." Hermione, who had been processing the information about Harry's fame with controlled intensity, spoke up. "So Harry is famous in the magical world?" "Yes," Dan confirmed. "He's called the boy who lived." "That's not fair. He didn't choose to be famous, he was just a baby." "You're right," Emma agreed. "It isn't fair, which is why we're preparing you both now. Harry, when you get to Hogwarts, people will treat you differently. Some will be excited to meet you. Some will have expectations." "I don't want to be famous," Harry said. "I just want to be normal." "You're not normal," Hermione told him matter-of-factly. "You're my brother. That makes you special, but not because of a scar, because of you." Harry smiled. "Thanks. Also, we're going to Hogwarts together. So even if people are strange about the famous part, I'll be there. We'll handle it together." After that conversation, their curiosity about the magical world became something close to academic obsession, at least on Hermione's part. She read every book Emma could source, then read them again, then began cross-referencing. She read passages aloud to Harry in the evenings, while he listened genuinely, even if his own reading tended toward adventure stories rather than theoretical frameworks. Professor McGonagall proposed something more formal when Harry turned 8. His accidental magic was becoming more frequent and more powerful, she observed, and it was time to teach them control, not spellwork. They were too young for wands, but the foundations of magical discipline. Focus, meditation, emotional awareness, the ability to recognize when their power was activating and what triggered it. She came every few weeks after that. Hermione approached each session like a scientist, taking careful notes and asking detailed questions about the theory underlying every technique. Harry learnt by feel, developing an instinctive understanding of his magic's rhythms that he could not have articulated, but that McGonagall described as remarkable. "You complement each other," she observed, after a session in which both children had managed controlled levitation of small objects without wands. Hermione provides the theoretical framework, and Harry provides the intuitive application. That kind of partnership is rare even among trained wizards. "We practice together," Hermione explained, "every evening before bed. Harry helps me when I get too frustrated with something, and I help him understand the theory behind what he's doing by instinct. Then, treasure it. It will serve you both well." The third significant magical incident happened when Hermione was 9 and Harry was 8, in the public library that Hermione treated as one of her primary habitats. A group of older boys had been making her miserable for 20 minutes, and when one of them grabbed her arm, Harry was across the library before he had consciously decided to move. Not walked across, simply arrived in the way that apparition looks to someone who has never seen it before. "Let go of my sister," he said, in the voice of someone much older. "Or what?" Pipsqueak. Harry's magic expanded outward like a held breath suddenly released. Every book in the surrounding shelves launched itself into the air and swirled in a protective spiral around the two of them. The older boys fled without looking back. When the books settled and the librarian came running, Harry and Hermione were standing in the wreckage, holding hands, looking equally startled. "I didn't mean to do that," Harry said. "I know," Hermione replied. "But thank you for always trying." Dumbledore's assessment that evening was characteristically measured. Accidental apparition at age 8 was unprecedented in his experience. The simultaneous levitation of multiple objects in a protective pattern was remarkable in its complexity. Most striking was the fact that Harry had somehow sensed Hermione's distress from 3 rooms away and responded physically before any rational signal could have reached him. "Their bond is deeper than I realized," Dumbledore said, and for a moment his voice carried genuine wonder. "Continue as you are. Let them be children, but prepare them for scrutiny. When they reach Hogwarts, this magical compatibility will be visible to everyone who knows what to look for." Hermione, eavesdropping on the stairs with her characteristic focus, absorbed the information and filed it carefully. She was not going to become simply Harry's sister. She was Hermione Granger, who happened to have a brother with a complicated destiny. She would be brilliant in her own right, or she would not rest. Given that she was 9 and had already read 4 years of Hogwarts textbooks, she thought the odds were in her favor. The years between 8 and 11 were long and deliberate preparation. Both children knew they were magical. Both understood what Hogwarts was and what it would mean. They absorbed theory, practiced control, asked questions of every visiting professor, and learned everything that could be learned without wands or a formal education. They also had a normal childhood. They played football in the garden and argued over the television and went to school with children who knew nothing about any of it. They celebrated Christmases and birthdays with extended family who knew only that Harry was adopted, which was true, and nothing else which was necessary. They fought occasionally, always about the same fundamental difference: Hermione's need for structure and planning running headlong into Harry's instinct to improvise. The fights were always brief. The reconciliations were always swift. "You're impossible," Hermione told Harry during one memorable argument about the treehouse they were trying to build, when she was 10 and he was 9. "You can't just decide gravity doesn't apply because you don't like my design. Your design is boring. We have magic. Why does the treehouse have to be normal? Because we're not allowed to use obvious magic where the neighbors can see it." They glared at each other, both absolutely certain they were right. "What if we compromise?" Harry said eventually. "Your design for the structure, my ideas for the inside." Hermione considered this. "The inside isn't visible from outside. That could work. Your logic, my chaos." "Our chaos," Hermione corrected. "Because I'm usually the one enabling your ridiculous plans." "True. So we're good. But Harry, next time you disagree with me, Could you please not start by calling my design boring? Sorry, your design is actually very clever. I just wanted it to be more fun. I know, and I'm sorry for calling you impossible. You're not impossible. You're just very Harry. Is that a compliment? Usually. They built the treehouse together, and it was structurally sound, which was Hermione's contribution, and filled with hidden compartments and a rope ladder that could be pulled up from inside, which were Harry's. It was the best treehouse in the neighborhood, and both of them knew it. By the time Harry turned 11 and his Hogwarts letter was imminent, both children were counting down with the particular impatience of people who feel their real life is about to begin. Hermione still had 2 years to wait, which frustrated her to a degree she expressed frequently. "I've already read all the first-year textbooks," she said on the evening of July the 30th, sitting on the end of Harry's bed while he was too excited to sleep. "I could test into second year. The age restriction is completely arbitrary. It's the rules. It's an illogical rule. You're the one who always wants to follow them. I follow rules when they make sense. This one doesn't." Harry grinned. "Tomorrow the letter comes." "What if we're sorted into different houses?" she asked quietly. Harry was quiet for a moment. This was the fear that had been growing in both of them for months, the first real thing about Hogwarts they couldn't control or plan for. "Then we make it work," he said. "We always do. Nothing changes between us just because we're in different houses. You're my sister. That's forever." "Forever," she agreed. They fell asleep eventually, both dreaming of a castle they had never seen, but already somehow knew was home. The letter arrived the next morning, delivered by a tawny owl at 7:45 on the 31st of July, 1991. It was addressed to Mr. H. Granger, the second bedroom, Granger Residence, Crawley, Sussex. Harry tore it open with shaking hands, Hermione reading over his shoulder before he had fully unfolded it. "Dear Mr. Granger, we are pleased to inform you that you have been accepted at Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry." "You got in," Hermione said, and threw her arms around him before he could speak. "We're going to Hogwarts," Harry said. "Eventually, both of us." Hermione agreed, beaming against his shoulder. From the doorway, Dan and Emma stood watching their 2 children embrace over a letter that meant everything. And Emma thought of that night 10 years ago in a safe house outside London, a baby with green eyes and a lightning scar, and the feeling of something irreversible and right settling into place. "Ready to go shopping?" Dan asked. Harry looked up. Diagon Alley. Diagon Alley. They went that afternoon, and the magical world opened its doors to Harry Granger for the very first time, with his family around him and everything ahead. Diagon Alley was organized chaos, which suited Hermione perfectly because she had brought a notebook. She had already sketched a rough map of the alley based on Dumbledore's descriptions during his visits, and had organized it into a logical route that would minimize backtracking while ensuring no essential stop was missed. Harry watched her annotate the map in her precise handwriting as they walked, adding real observations beside her anticipated ones. "You're organizing a shopping trip," he said. "Someone has to. Otherwise, we'll wander randomly and miss something important. We have a list from Hogwarts. The list is the minimum requirement. There are almost certainly supplementary materials we should consider." The Leaky Cauldron was their first stop, a slightly shabby pub that opened onto nothing visible from the ordinary street outside. Tom the barman recognized Harry the moment he stepped through the door. The scar was unmistakable. "Bless my soul," Tom whispered. "Harry Potter, in my pub." "Harry Granger," Harry said politely. "And this is my sister, Hermione." Tom blinked. "Sister? But I thought, well, welcome, both of you, welcome." This was the first of many such corrections Harry would make that day. By the third one, he had developed a routine for it. A brief, pleasant statement of fact, delivered without irritation, because irritation, Hermione had pointed out during one of their preparatory conversations, would only make the interactions longer and more memorable. Matter-of-fact politeness was the fastest route through. Gringotts was enormous and governed entirely by goblins who moved through it with the brisk confidence of people who have never had cause to be impressed by anything humans do. Their cart rattled down through tunnels at a speed that Harry found exhilarating and Hermione found analytically interesting, which was not quite the same thing. When they reached Vault 687, and the door swung open to reveal piles of gold galleons and silver sickles glinting in torchlight, Harry went very still. "That's all mine?" he asked. "Your inheritance from your parents," the goblin Griphook confirmed. "You may withdraw what you need. When you turn 17, you will have full access to the family vault, which contains considerably more." Harry filled his bag with coins, feeling the strangeness of spending money from people he had never known. Dan, reading his expression, rested a hand briefly on his son's shoulder. "They'd want you to use it," he said quietly, "for your education, for your future. That's what parents do." Harry nodded and didn't say anything, and they moved on. At Flourish and Blots, Harry bought his required textbooks. Hermione bought those and 4 additional volumes she had identified in advance as essential supplementary reading. At the pet shop, Harry spent 20 minutes considering his options before choosing a snowy owl with amber eyes and an air of tolerant dignity. He named her Hedwig on the spot. Ollivander's was last. The wand maker emerged from the back of the shop with the particular quality of someone who has been waiting a long time for something specific and has a great deal of patience about it. He studied Harry with silvery eyes that catalogued rather than merely observed. "Harry Potter," he said softly. "Harry Granger," Harry said for the 4th time that day. "Ah, yes, the adoption. I had heard." Ollivander said this as though adoptions were an interesting quirk of natural history, rather than something that happened to actual people. "Which is your wand arm?" The fitting took 47 minutes. Hermione counted from the chair she had taken in the corner, noting each failed attempt with the focus of someone building a data set. Wand after wand produced sparks of the wrong color, or no result at all, or in one memorable case, a small localized explosion that sent a hat stand across the room. Ollivander collected each failure with the equanimity of a scientist. At the 48th minute, he pulled a box from somewhere deeper in the back. Holly and phoenix feather, 11 inches. Nice and supple. "Try this one." Harry picked it up and felt warmth move through his hand and up his arm, a sense of recognition he had not expected. He gave it a wave, and a shower of red and gold sparks burst from the tip. "Bravo," Ollivander said softly. "Very good, but curious. Very curious indeed." "What's curious?" Hermione asked from her chair before Harry could speak. "The phoenix whose tail feather is in that wand gave one other feather. Just one." Ollivander paused, and it so happens that the wand holding that other feather gave Mr. Granger his scar. The shop went very quiet. "Their wands are brothers," Hermione said slowly. "Harry's wand and Voldemort's. Curious indeed how these things happen. The wand chooses the wizard, remember? I think we must expect great things from you, Mr. Granger. After all, he who must not be named did great things. Terrible, yes, but great." Outside the shop, Harry stood on the cobbled alley holding his wand and staring at it. "Your wand is connected to Voldemort's," Hermione said. She had come to stand beside him without being asked, the way she always did when he needed steadying. "But Harry, that doesn't mean anything about you. The wand chose you for your own merits. You're nothing like him." "How do you know that?" "Because I know you. Because you spent 8 years helping me with homework and standing between me and every person who tried to make me feel small. Because you're good, Harry. A wand doesn't change that. It recognized something in you." Harry looked at his sister and felt the tightness in his chest ease. "Okay, you're right. I'm usually right," she said, attempting lightness. "Usually," he agreed, managing a small smile. That evening they sat in Harry's room, surrounded by his new school supplies, Hedwig hooting softly from her cage. 1 month left until September the 1st. "I'm going to miss you," Hermione admitted. "I know it's only a few months until Christmas, but Harry, we've never been apart for more than a week. I'll write you every day." "That's excessive. Weekly is more practical." "I'll write you every day anyway," Harry said stubbornly. "And Hermione, the second you get to Hogwarts in 2 years, we're going to be together again. Nothing is going to change that. You're my sister, you're my best friend. A few years apart doesn't change any of that." Hermione hugged him tightly. "Don't forget me when you make new friends." "Never." "But Hermione, I am going to make friends. And you should too when you get there. We can't just spend all our time together. Why not? Because that's not healthy. We need other people too, but they're additions, not replacements. You understand? Hermione thought about this. So we'll have our own friends, but we'll still be us. Exactly. I can live with that. September the 1st arrived on a crisp Tuesday morning. Platform 9 3/4 was chaos. Families everywhere, owls hooting, cats yowling, the Hogwarts Express gleaming crimson in the morning light. Harry hugged his parents and then turned to Hermione. 2 years, he said. Then you'll be here too. 2 years, Hermione agreed. Write me everything. Tell me about the classes, the castle, the teachers. I want to know all of it. I will, and Hermione, I know, she said, forever. Forever. Harry boarded the train and found a compartment and pressed his face to the window. He watched Hermione on the platform, both of them waving until the train rounded a bend, and she disappeared from view. Then he settled back in his seat and prepared for the next chapter. He just wished she were with him, but in 2 years she would be, and until then they would manage. They always did. The compartment door slid open just as Harry was composing his first letter to Hermione in his head. Excuse me, do you mind? Everywhere else is full. Harry looked up to find a tall, lanky boy with flaming red hair and freckles standing in the doorway holding a cage containing what appeared to be a very dejected rat. Not at all. I'm Harry. Harry Granger. The boy's eyes went immediately to Harry's forehead, where the scar was visible beneath his fringe. Blimey, you're Harry Potter. Sorry, you said Granger. But you're him, aren't you? The boy who lived. Harry suppressed a sigh. This was exactly what he had been dreading. I was born Harry Potter, yes, but I was adopted when I was 15 months old. So I'm Harry Granger now. Right? Sorry. I'm Ron. Ron Weasley. Ron sat down, still staring slightly. But you really did defeat you-know-who. I was a baby. I didn't defeat anyone. My mother's magic protected me, and his curse rebounded. That's all. Ron seemed to absorb this. Can we talk about something else? Please, Harry said, and felt a surge of genuine warmth toward this boy he had known for 30 seconds. They talked for the rest of the journey. Ron was easy company, funny in a self-deprecating way, and refreshingly stopped treating Harry like a celebrity after the first 5 minutes. By the time they reached Hogwarts, Harry felt like he had made a friend, which was good, because stepping off the train and seeing the castle illuminated against the night sky made him desperately wish Hermione were there to see it with him. The sorting ceremony was terrifying. Harry watched student after student get called forward, the battered old hat placed on their head, a house announced. When Granger, Harry was called, whispers erupted across the hall. That's Harry Potter. Why is his name Granger? I heard he was adopted. Harry walked to the stool, sat down, and the hat dropped over his eyes. Well, well, a voice said in his mind. Harry Potter. Though you prefer Granger now, I see. Interesting. You have courage. Certainly your mother's bravery runs deep in you. But there is a sharp mind here too, sharper than you let on. Ravenclaw would suit you very well. My sister thinks I should be Gryffindor, Harry thought. Ah, yes. Hermione. I will meet her in 2 years. Extraordinary magical signature, that one. And you love her dearly. Where do you want to go? Harry thought about Hermione. She had said Gryffindor valued bravery, and he would need to be brave for whatever was coming. He also thought that if they ended up in different houses, being in Gryffindor would be better than Slytherin for the visiting. Gryffindor. I choose Gryffindor. Interesting that you choose partly based on your sister's eventual arrival. That is remarkably forward-thinking. Very well. Gryffindor it is. The last word was shouted aloud, and the Gryffindor table erupted. Harry walked over in a daze and sat down next to Ron, who had been sorted moments before. The feast was overwhelming. The food was extraordinary. The ghosts were bizarre, and everyone kept staring at his scar. That night in Gryffindor Tower, Harry wrote his first letter to Hermione. Dear Hermione, I'm in Gryffindor. The hat considered Ravenclaw, but I chose Gryffindor. Long story, I'll explain at Christmas. Hogwarts is incredible. The castle is bigger than any building I have ever seen. The ceiling in the Great Hall is enchanted to look like the sky. There are moving staircases and talking portraits and actual ghosts just floating about the corridors. You are going to love it. I made a friend, Ron Weasley. He's funny and doesn't care that I'm famous after the first 5 minutes, which makes him immediately one of my favorite people. I miss you already. It's strange being here without you. I keep turning to tell you things and then remembering you're not here. Write back soon. Tell me everything happening at home. Love, Harry. Hermione's response arrived the next day via Hedwig. Harry, Gryffindor. I knew it. The hat, considered Ravenclaw for you, that's fascinating. I'm documenting everything about the sorting process for research purposes. I am so proud of you for making a friend already. Ron Weasley, that's Arthur Weasley's son, isn't it? Dad met him at the ministry once. His family sounds interesting. I miss you too. The house is too quiet without you. Mum keeps setting 4 places at dinner and then remembering it's only 3 now. We are all adjusting. Study hard. Learn everything. Take notes for me. I want to know about all your classes. Especially Transfiguration. Professor McGonagall is supposed to be brilliant. Love, Hermione. P.S. Don't forget to eat properly. You get distracted when you're excited and skip meals. I'm not there to remind you, so you have to remember yourself. Harry smiled at the postscript. That was so entirely Hermione managing him from 100 miles away. Classes began the next day. Transfiguration with Professor McGonagall was fascinating, and Harry found himself genuinely interested in the theory behind turning matches into needles. Charms with Professor Flitwick was energetic and fun. History of Magic with Professor Binns was the most boring thing Harry had ever experienced, a masterclass in making extraordinary events sound like wet concrete. And Potions with Professor Snape was hostile from the first moment. Potter, Snape said during roll call, his black eyes fixing on Harry with immediate dislike. Our new celebrity. Tell me, what would I get if I added powdered root of asphodel to an infusion of wormwood? Harry's mind went blank. I don't know, sir. Clearly, fame isn't everything. Where would you look if I asked you to find me a bazaar? I don't know, sir. And what is the difference between monk's hood and wolfsbane? I don't know, sir. Harry felt his face burning as other students snickered around him. Snape surveyed him with thin satisfaction. Pity. For your information, asphodel and wormwood make a sleeping potion so powerful it is known as the Draught of Living Death. A bezoar is a stone taken from the stomach of the goat and will save you from most poisons. As for monkshood and wolfsbane, they are the same plant, which also goes by the name of aconite. Well, why aren't you all copying this down? After class, Ron was indignant. That was completely unfair. He was asking you things that aren't even in our textbooks. He hates me, Harry said flatly. I don't know why, but he looked at me like I'd personally offended him just by existing. That evening, Harry wrote to Hermione. Professor Snape hates me. I don't know why, but he called me out in front of everyone and asked questions I couldn't possibly have known the answers to. It was humiliating. Hermione's response came the next morning. Professor Snape was friends with your birth mother at Hogwarts. I found a reference in Hogwarts, a History Expanded edition, that mentions Lily Evans and Severus Snape being close before something drove them apart. He might be targeting you because you remind him of her, or because you look like your birth father who apparently was difficult towards Snape at school. Either way, it is not about you personally. Do not let him get to you. Also, Harry, those questions he asked, I looked them up. They are all in Advanced Potion Making by Libatius Borage, which is a 6th-year textbook. He was testing you on material you have not yet been taught. That is not just unfair, it is deliberately cruel. I am furious on your behalf. Study extra hard in potions. Don't give him a reason to pick on you. And Harry, you are brilliant. One mean professor does not change that. Harry read the letter 3 times, feeling warmth spread through his chest. Even hundreds of miles away, Hermione had his back. She had researched Snape's history, identified exactly why the questioning had been unfair, and reminded Harry of his own worth in the space of a single letter. He missed her with an intensity that surprised him. October brought the troll. Harry and Ron had been heading back to Gryffindor Tower after the Halloween feast when they overheard Professor Quirrell sprinting past, shrieking about a troll in the dungeons. During the ensuing chaos, they realized that Parvati Patil was still in the girls' bathroom on the second floor and had not been warned. Without thinking, Harry ran toward the bathroom with Ron close behind. They found the troll cornering Parvati against the far wall, its enormous club raised, the girl frozen with terror. They distracted it, evaded it, and eventually Ron managed a perfect Wingardium Leviosa that lifted the club straight up and dropped it on the troll's head. It collapsed with a crash that shook the floor. When the professors arrived, Harry took full responsibility. He had come looking for Parvati because she hadn't known about the troll, and they couldn't have just left her. McGonagall had been furious and proud in equal measure, deducting 5 points for putting themselves in danger and awarding 50 for saving a student's life. Parvati Patil, still shaking, told Harry quietly that she would not forget it. That evening, Harry wrote to Hermione, "Ron and I fought a troll today, a 12-foot mountain troll in the girls' bathroom. Long story, we saved Parvati Patil. McGonagall was furious and then gave us points, which was confusing. I wasn't really scared while it was happening. I just saw Parvati in danger and knew we had to help. Is that normal?" Hermione's response arrived the next morning and was extremely lengthy. "Harry James Granger, you fought a troll. A troll. Do you have any idea how dangerous that is? I looked up mountain trolls in Fantastic Beasts and where to find them. They are classified XXX by the Ministry. You are 11. You are not a skilled wizard yet. I am so angry at you right now, and so proud and so frightened. Do not ever do something that dangerous without proper backup. Do you understand me? I cannot lose you, Harry. You are my brother. If something happened to you, I cannot even finish that sentence. I am glad you saved Parvati. That was brave and good. But please, please be more careful. The wizarding world is dangerous in ways we did not fully appreciate. Promise me you will think before you charge into danger. And to answer your question, no, it is not normal to feel no fear when facing a troll. That is either exceptional courage or exceptional stupidity. Knowing you, it is probably both. Love, Hermione. P.S. Mum cried when she read your letter. Dad is doing the proud, angry thing, which is when he is simultaneously proud and upset. They are writing to Professor Dumbledore about safety protocols. Expect a very stern letter. The stern letter from his parents arrived the next day. But there was also a note from Dumbledore. Your bravery in saving Miss Patil was commendable. Your recklessness in charging into danger without informing a professor was not. Please remember that courage without wisdom is simply foolishness. Your sister would tell you the same thing, I suspect. That said, I am glad you are making the kind of choices that honor your house. Just perhaps make them with slightly more planning in the future." November brought Quidditch. Harry had been recruited to the Gryffindor team after McGonagall witnessed him catch Neville Longbottom's Remembrall in a spectacular dive that should not have been possible on a school broom. He became the youngest Seeker in a century. "I wish you could see me fly," Harry wrote to Hermione after his first match, which Gryffindor won on a clear, cold afternoon. "Flying is the closest thing I've found to how I feel when our magic works together. Like everything makes sense. Like I'm completely myself. I'll see you play next year when I'm there," Hermione wrote back. "And Harry, I am so proud of you. Youngest Seeker in a century. That is extraordinary. But please be careful. Quidditch injuries are extremely common according to Quidditch Through the Ages. Do not break anything important." December brought a disturbing discovery. Harry, Ron, and Parvati had been quietly investigating strange occurrences around the castle all term, drawn by the mystery of the third-floor corridor that Dumbledore had explicitly forbidden students from entering. They had found a three-headed dog standing over a trapdoor and deduced that something of significant value was being guarded beneath the school. "I think someone's trying to steal whatever it is," Harry wrote to Hermione. "I think it might be Professor Snape." Her response was not what he expected. "Harry, be very careful. If something is being protected at Hogwarts, it is probably both incredibly valuable and incredibly dangerous. Do not investigate this alone. Get help from professors you trust. Do not play the hero. But also, I do not think it is Professor Snape. I know he is mean to you, but Dumbledore trusts him, and Dumbledore does not trust easily. If Snape were actually trying to steal something, Dumbledore would know. Look for someone else. Someone behaving suspiciously, but whom no one would suspect. That is always how these things work. The culprit is never the obvious choice. Harry thought about this. Hermione was right. If Dumbledore trusted Snape, there was a reason. So who else might be after whatever was being guarded? Professor Quirrell came to mind almost immediately. The Defense Against the Dark Arts teacher stuttered constantly, seemed nervous around everything, and had been behaving strangely around Harry all year, flinching whenever Harry got too close to him. Harry started watching Quirrell more carefully. Christmas came, and Harry went home to Crawley. The moment he stepped through the door, Hermione launched herself at him. "You're back. You're finally back." Harry hugged his sister tightly, realizing how much he had missed her physical presence. Letters were good, but they were not the same as actually being together. They spent the entire 2 weeks catching up. Harry told Hermione everything. His classes, his professors, Ron, the troll, Quidditch, his growing suspicions about what was hidden beneath the school. Hermione listened with intense focus, asking questions, cross-referencing details, building her own picture of the situation. By the end of the first day, she had produced a comprehensive theory about the hidden object that Harry found impressive even by her standards. "You're going back to Hogwarts better prepared," she declared at the start of the second week. "I've been reading ahead. Here is what you need to know about second-term classes." "Hermione," Harry interrupted after an hour. "This is supposed to be Christmas. This is me helping you succeed. This is you being Hermione, which means overthinking everything. Is that a complaint?" "No, just an observation." On Christmas Day, Harry received several gifts from Hogwarts friends, and one anonymous parcel containing an extraordinarily fine silvery cloak with a note that said, "Only your father left this in my possession before he died. It is time it was returned to you. Use it well." Harry held the invisibility cloak for a long time, feeling the odd weight of an inheritance he hadn't known to want. "It was your father's," Hermione said quietly, sitting beside him. "I know. How does it feel?" "Strange. Good strange and sad strange at the same time." Hermione leaned her head briefly against his shoulder. "I think that's exactly right." Harry returned to Hogwarts in January with renewed determination. His suspicions about Quirrell solidified as the term progressed. The professor's behavior grew stranger, more erratic, and Harry noticed that Quirrell seemed to be the only one who had convenient foreknowledge of where certain disturbances would occur. By May, Harry was nearly certain. In June, everything came to a head. Harry went to McGonagall with his evidence laid out clearly, the way Hermione had taught him to present an argument. Facts first, logical sequence, conclusion at the end. He explained Quirrell's nervous behavior, his questions about the stone's protection, the suspicious timing of the Halloween troll, which could have been a deliberate distraction, and the specific knowledge Quirrell seemed to have about things he should not have known. McGonagall listened with an expression that grew increasingly grave. She asked him to wait. She returned with Dumbledore. Within 2 hours, several professors had confronted Quirrell and discovered that he was harboring a fragment of Voldemort's spirit beneath his turban, had been doing so all year, and had been working methodically towards stealing the Philosopher's Stone hidden beneath the school. Harry never had to face Quirrell alone, never had to stand in that underground chamber by himself at 11 years old against a man who was already dying and something far worse besides, because Hermione had taught him to go to authorities with evidence rather than trying to solve everything himself, and that lesson had made all the difference. 50 points to Gryffindor, Dumbledore announced at the end-of-year feast, for Mr. Harry Granger's quick thinking and proper use of authority in identifying a serious threat to this school. On the train home, Ron looked at Harry with an expression of thoughtful assessment. "You're different from other famous people, you know." "How so?" "You don't act like you're special. You ask for help when you need it. You think things through. Most 11-year-olds would have tried to stop Quirrell themselves. My sister would have killed me if I did something that stupid," Harry said simply. "She taught me better than that." "Your sister sounds terrifying." "She's the best person I know," Harry corrected. "And yes, also occasionally terrifying. Those things are not mutually exclusive. When Harry arrived home, Hermione was waiting at the door. She didn't say anything, just stepped forward and hugged him hard. You're home, you're safe. You didn't do anything stupidly heroic without backup. I went to McGonagall exactly like you told me to. Good. I'm proud of you. She pulled back and looked at him properly. Now tell me everything. September the 1st, 1993. Platform 9 3/4 was its usual chaos of families and trunks and owls, and the particular electricity that comes from a crowd of people on the edge of something new. Harry barely noticed any of it. He was watching Hermione. She was dressed in brand-new Hogwarts robes that still had the stiffness of clothes that had never been worn, and she was standing on the platform, looking at the Hogwarts Express with an expression that Harry recognized as her trying very hard to appear calm when she was actually anything but. "Ready?" he asked. "I have been ready for 11 years," Hermione replied. "Arguably longer, if you count the years I spent reading the textbooks." They boarded the train together for the first time, and Harry felt something settle in him that had been slightly off balance for 2 years. He found their usual compartment. Ron was already there, saving seats, and Hermione joined them as naturally as though she had always been part of this particular arrangement. "So you're Harry's sister," Ron said, looking at her with the expression of someone meeting a legend they had heard extensively about. "He's talked about you constantly for 2 years. I feel like I already know you." "He's mentioned you too," Hermione said. "You helped him during the chamber situation last year. Thank you for being there with him." "I didn't really do that much," Ron said, looking slightly embarrassed. "You were the one who figured it out. From a distance, you were actually there with him. That matters more than people think." Ron blinked at her. Harry hid a smile. Hermione had that effect on people, the sudden realization that she was paying more careful attention to them than they had expected. A girl with very straight silvery blonde hair and large protuberant eyes drifted past the compartment door, paused, and stuck her head in. "Has anyone seen a toad? A boy named Neville has lost one." "Haven't seen it," Harry said. "Sorry." The girl drifted away again, humming something tuneless to herself. "That was unusual," Ron observed. "That was Luna Lovegood," Hermione said. "She's in my year. Her mother died in an experimental magic accident when Luna was 9. She's been raised largely by her father, who runs a rather unconventional publication called The Quibbler." She paused, noticing their expressions. "I memorized the student roster. Research, Harry. Always research." "Of course you did," Harry said. At Hogwarts, the sorting began, and Harry watched each first year called forward with the particular attention of someone who remembered exactly how it felt. When Granger, Hermione, was called, the entire Great Hall seemed to draw a collective breath. Everyone knew that Harry Potter's adopted sister was starting this year. The whispers started before she had even reached the stool. "That's Potter's sister. I heard she's brilliant. She'll be Ravenclaw for certain." The hat was placed on Hermione's head. "Ah," a voice said in her mind. "Another Granger, though you are quite different from your brother. Such a mind. I have not seen this degree of intellectual potential in decades. Ravenclaw is the obvious choice. You would absolutely thrive there." "What about Gryffindor?" Hermione thought. "Interesting. Why Gryffindor?" "Because that's where my brother is. We are better together than apart. That is not weakness, it is strategy. You would choose a less academically optimal placement for personal loyalty. That is simultaneously very Hufflepuff, fairly Slytherin in its strategic thinking, and entirely Gryffindor in its underlying courage. You would genuinely do well in any house, Miss Granger. But I should warn you, choosing comfort over challenge may limit your growth." "It is not comfort," Hermione thought back, with some firmness. "It is choosing to challenge him to be better while he challenges me to be braver. We make each other better. That is not limiting, that is exponential." The hat laughed, which was a sound Hermione had not expected and would remember for a long time. "Brilliant reasoning. Very well. Gryffindor." The Gryffindor table erupted. Harry was cheering loudest of all, on his feet before he had consciously decided to stand, watching his sister walk toward him across the great hall with her chin up and her eyes bright. She sat down beside him, and he felt for the first time since arriving at Hogwarts, entirely at home. "Welcome to Gryffindor," he said. "Thanks for the recommendation," she replied, grinning. That night in the common room before curfew, Hermione sat with Harry and looked around at the squashy armchairs and the fire and the portraits, taking everything in with the systematic thoroughness she brought to every new environment. "This is real," she said, almost to herself. "I'm actually here." Finally, Harry agreed. "Now the real adventures begin. Together this time." "Together," she confirmed. "Just like it's supposed to be." From across the common room, Ron watched them and thought that he had never seen two people who looked less alike behave more like the same person. It was, he decided, both slightly unnerving and entirely wonderful. Having Hermione at Hogwarts transformed Harry's experience in ways he had not fully anticipated. Where he had spent 2 years navigating the school with Ron's easy company, but without his anchor, suddenly he had the person who knew him better than anyone. The person who could read his moods, anticipate his concerns, and call him out on his nonsense before it became a problem. "You're planning to try out for the Quidditch team again," Hermione said during their first week, catching Harry in the common room at a moment when he was staring out the window in the way he stared at things he was thinking about intensely. "Haven't decided yet," Harry said, which was not quite a lie, but not the truth either. "That's rubbish, and we both know it. Harry, you love flying. You're extraordinary at it. You're trying out. But if I make the team, that's practice 3 times a week and matches on weekends, which means less time for studying, which means I'll help you with homework on the evenings before practice, and you'll help me be less rigid about my revision schedule. We balance each other out. Stop overthinking. That's usually my line." Now I'm returning the favor. Harry tried out and made the team again, returning to the seeker position as though the broom had been waiting for him. Hermione attended every practice, sitting in the stands with her textbooks and doing homework while he flew, occasionally shouting tactical advice that was surprisingly useful despite her limited understanding of the sport. "She doesn't even like Quidditch," Ron observed during one practice, watching Hermione correct Harry's approach angle on a particularly tricky dive by demonstrating the geometry with a diagram she had drawn in her notes. "But she's here for every single session." "That's Hermione," Harry said. "She supports what I love even when she doesn't fully understand it. She'd do the same thing if I collected beetles. She'd have read every book on beetles within a week and be telling me which subspecies were most interesting. That's either very dedicated or slightly frightening." "Both," Harry said. "Definitely both." Classes with Hermione were a revelation. In Transfiguration, they were competitive in the best possible way. Both excellent, both pushing each other to be slightly better than they had been the week before. In Defense Against the Dark Arts with Professor Lupin, who had arrived this year with a quiet competence and a slight air of someone carrying something heavy, they partnered naturally. Harry's instinct combining with Hermione's theoretical knowledge to produce practical work that Lupin praised specifically on several occasions. Potions with Professor Snape became more complicated with Hermione present. Snape's treatment of Harry had always been unfair, but until now, Harry had had no way to demonstrate that in any formal sense. Hermione gave him one. In their first potions class together, she brewed a perfect shrinking solution, and Snape awarded her 10 points for adequate work. Then he turned to Harry, whose potion was by any objective measure identical in quality, and told him the work was barely acceptable. After class, Hermione was incandescent. "That was exactly the same quality as mine. He marked you down deliberately. I know. He's been doing it for 2 years. That is not acceptable. I'm documenting this. Every instance, every discrepancy. If it continues, I'm filing a formal complaint with Professor McGonagall." "Hermione, it's fine." "It is not fine. You are being discriminated against because of who your birth father was, and I will not stand here and watch that happen. You deserve to be assessed on your own merits. Everyone does." Every subsequent instance of Snape's unfair treatment went into Hermione's log, recorded with dates and specific details and comparisons to the marks given for equivalent work from other students. By October, she had enough evidence to present to McGonagall, who summoned Snape for a conversation the contents of which Harry never learnt. Whatever was said, Snape's treatment of Harry improved marginally after that. Still cold, still strict, but the active and deliberate cruelty had a ceiling on it now, and they both knew who had put it there. "You didn't have to do that," Harry told Hermione. "Yes, I did. You're my brother. I protect you from trolls and basilisks, and I protect you from unfair professors. It's the same principle." The Dementor problem began almost immediately that September, with the grey-hooded creatures stationed at every entrance to the school as part of the search for Sirius Black, the escaped prisoner whom the entire wizarding world believed was hunting Harry. Harry's first encounter with one happened on the Hogwarts Express before they had even arrived. When a Dementor glided into their compartment and the temperature dropped to something well below wrong, Harry heard his mother's voice. He had never heard it before, not in any memory or recording, and the sound of it was heartbreaking even as it was being ripped from him. Her desperate pleading, her final bargaining with something that had never intended to bargain back. He came back to consciousness to find himself slumped in his seat, and Hermione holding his hand with both of hers, her face white, her eyes frightened in a way he almost never saw. "You were screaming," she said quietly, "about your mother, about that night." "I heard her," Harry said. "I heard her die." Hermione's grip on his hand tightened. "We are going to learn to fight these things. Dementors will not control you. I won't allow it." Professor Lupin proved to be the best defense against the dark arts teacher Harry had encountered, and it was Lupin who offered to teach Harry the Patronus charm after observing his reaction on the train. The spell was ancient and demanding, requiring the caster to focus on the single happiest memory they possessed and hold it against the cold that Dementors brought. Harry struggled at first. He cycled through memories, Christmas mornings, Quidditch victories, the day he had first flown a real broom and understood instinctively that this was what he was for. None of them were quite right. They all had edges, small complications, minor shadows that the Dementor's cold found and widened. Then he remembered coming home from Hogwarts after first year, walking through the front door of the house in Crawley, and Hermione launching herself at him before he had even set down his trunk, both of them talking over each other at high speed about everything they had missed, the absolute bone-deep certainty that he was home and loved and exactly where he was supposed to be. Expecto Patronum. A silver stag erupted from his wand, fully formed, luminous, enormous. It filled the room with light. Lupin stared, a corporeal Patronus. Most adult wizards cannot produce that. "What memory did you use?" "Coming home to Hermione," Harry said, "after being apart for a year. That's when I'm happiest." "When we're together?" "Later," Hermione asked him about it. He told her. Her eyes went bright in the way that meant she was not going to cry, but was choosing firmly not to. "That's your happiest memory," she said. "Always has been." She was quiet for a moment. "Mine is the day Mum and Dad brought you home. The day I got a brother." They did not say anything else for a little while, and they did not need to. The Sirius Black situation unraveled in the shrieking shack in May, in a rush of revelations that arrived faster than either of them could fully process. Sirius Black was not a murderer. He had been Harry's father's best friend, had been framed by Peter Pettigrew, who everyone believed was dead, and was Harry's godfather, which was a word Harry had to turn over several times before it felt real. Pettigrew had been hiding as Ron's rat Scabbers for 12 years. The truth came out in the shack with Lupin and Sirius, and the whole wretched history of one betrayal and one injustice and one life wasted in Azkaban for something he had never done. "He's telling the truth," Hermione said, after hearing the full account. Her voice was steady and analytical in the way it always was when she was suppressing a strong emotional reaction in order to think clearly. "The story is internally consistent. Pettigrew's behavior matches someone under the sustained stress of maintaining a disguise. And Sirius was never given a trial, which is a fundamental violation of basic legal procedure, regardless of how certain people were of his guilt." 12 years, Harry said. His voice had gone hollow. "My godfather has been in Azkaban for 12 years for something he didn't do, which means we need to get him to the Ministry, get him a trial, and expose Pettigrew. We have the evidence. We have Pettigrew himself." But the full moon rose before they could get back to the castle. Lupin transformed. Pettigrew escaped in the chaos. Sirius was captured by Dementors when he was too weakened to maintain his animagus form. By the time Harry and Hermione reached the castle, Sirius was locked in the tower awaiting the Dementor's kiss, and Dumbledore was telling them in a very careful voice that more than one innocent life had been saved by a person being in two places at once. Hermione understood before Harry did. She reached into her robes and pulled out a small golden device on a chain. "The time turner," she said. "Professor McGonagall gave me one at the start of term so I could attend more classes. It turns time back by 1 hour per turn." She paused. "We could save him." Harry stared at her. "That's insane. It's a calculated risk. We know exactly what happened. We simply need to ensure it happens correctly, while also freeing Sirius without being seen by our past selves. The theoretical framework is sound. You're suggesting we travel back in time. I'm suggesting we save your innocent godfather from something worse than death. Yes, I am suggesting we travel back in time. Are you with me?" They turned the time turner 3 times and stepped back 3 hours into a world where Sirius was still in the shack and Buckbeak the Hippogriff was still alive, and everything was still possible if you moved carefully and didn't look directly at yourself. They freed Buckbeak first, luring him away from the executioner's axe in the last minutes before the committee arrived. Then they rode him to the tower window, and Harry spoke to Sirius through the bars, telling him to climb out onto the Hippogriff's back and hold on. "How did you know to come?" Sirius asked, looking between them with an expression of bewildered gratitude. "Dumbledore gave us a hint," Harry said, "and Hermione worked out the rest." "Where do I go?" "Somewhere they can't find you until we can clear your name properly. We'll send word when it's done." Buckbeak carried Sirius Black into the darkening sky, and below, in the courtyard, their past selves were emerging from the shack and beginning the long walk back to the castle, and the loop closed around itself neat as a knot. When they returned to their proper moment, exhausted and slightly light-headed from the temporal displacement, Dumbledore simply looked at them with his eyes very bright and said, "Well done, both of you. That took remarkable coordination and absolute trust in each other." "We've been practicing that for 12 years, Hermione said. That summer, Sirius remained in hiding, keeping contact through a series of owls that Harry treasured and kept in a box under his bed. He had his name cleared officially in August, when Pettigrew was finally captured hiding in Knockturn Alley, and the wizarding world was given the somewhat difficult news that it had imprisoned an innocent man for more than a decade, without anyone thinking to give him a trial. "I have a godfather," Harry said to Hermione one evening in the garden in Crawley, with the summer going golden around them. "An actual godfather who's alive and innocent and wants to be part of my life." "That's wonderful," Hermione said. "But also, I can see you're trying to work out where he fits. And the answer is that he fits wherever you want him to. Family is not a limited resource, Harry. Having Sirius does not diminish what you have with us. It just means another person loves you. That is never a problem. When did you get so wise about family?" "I have been your sister for 12 years. I learned from observation. 4th year brought the Triwizard Tournament, international students, and a development that blindsided both of them entirely. When Harry's name came out of the Goblet of Fire as an unexpected 4th champion, Hermione's first reaction was not surprise or excitement. It was fury, quick and specific, and directed at whoever had done this. "Someone entered you without your permission," she said, pacing the common room while Harry sat in a chair absorbing the information. "This is not a prank or a mistake. This is a magically binding contract that a 14-year-old did not consent to, for a tournament that has a documented history of serious injury and death. This is attempted murder. The goblet creates a binding contract. If I refuse, I lose my magic." Hermione stopped pacing. Her expression moved through several stages of outrage and landed on something harder and more purposeful. "Then we prepare, extensively. Whatever is at the end of this, you are not walking into it unprepared. I will research everything, every task, every precedent, every loophole. We will find every advantage that exists, and we will use all of them." She threw herself into preparation with the terrifying thoroughness she brought to anything involving Harry's survival. She spent every free hour in the library. She wrote to Bill and Charlie Weasley for advice on dragons and curses respectively. She contacted Victor Crumb, the Durmstrang champion and an internationally famous Quidditch player, to ask about advanced training techniques. A letter which he answered with what Hermione described as impressive directness, and Harry described as suspicious eagerness. When Harry learned he would be facing a Hungarian horntail in the first task, Hermione went pale. "All right," she said, after a pause that lasted exactly as long as she needed to compose herself. "We work with this. Your strength is flying. We emphasize that. Summoning charm to get your firebolt. Aerial tactics, speed over confrontation. You do not fight the dragon, Harry. You outmaneuver it. We study horntail behavior patterns so you know how it will react to different stimuli. We practice the summoning charm until you can call objects from 200 yards. They practiced for a week. Harry could summon objects from the far end of the Quidditch pitch before they were done, with a precision and speed that surprised even him. Hermione drilled him on aerial combat theory in the evenings and spent her afternoons studying dragon neurology, which was a field she had not previously known she needed to understand. The day of the first task, she was visibly shaking. "You've got this," she told him, gripping his shoulders outside the champion's tent. "Summon the broom, fly fast, grab the egg, get out. Simple." "Simple," Harry repeated. "And Harry," her voice dropped, "come back. Whatever happens, come back to me. I promise." The task was terrifying and spectacular, and ended with Harry in the medical tent with a broken wrist and the golden egg, which Madame Pomfrey fixed in minutes. Hermione was there before the tent flap had finished falling closed behind him. "You broke your wrist," she said. "I got the egg. You broke your wrist. Small price for not being set on fire. I'm fine, Hermione. It's already being fixed." She hugged him very carefully, mindful of his injuries. "Don't scare me like that. Can't promise that. There are 2 more tasks. Then we prepare better for those." The Yule Ball arrived with complications Harry had not anticipated and had been too focused on not dying to see coming. As a champion, he needed a date, and most of the girls who seemed interested specifically in Harry Potter the famous champion, rather than Harry Granger the actual person, which felt wrong in a way he could not precisely articulate. He eventually asked Parvati Patil, who had been his friend since the troll incident in first year, and who he trusted to see him clearly. She accepted with genuine warmth. Hermione, meanwhile, had been asked by Victor Crumb. He had approached her in the library and asked first about her research, rather than her appearance, which she considered the correct order of priorities and found unexpectedly charming. She had said yes. The night of the ball, Harry helped Hermione get ready in an unused classroom, as they had done for every formal occasion since childhood, him sitting on a desk while she stood in front of a mirror, managing the complicated business of doing something intentional with her hair. "You look incredible," he told her honestly. She had achieved something sleek and elegant with hair that was normally its own ecosystem, and her dress robes were a periwinkle blue that made her look older and more certain of herself than usual. "Mum helped me pick them over the summer just in case," Hermione said, adjusting the collar. "Do I look all right? I've never been to anything like this. You look perfect. Crumb is going to lose his mind." "I don't care about Crumb losing his mind. I care about not embarrassing myself in front of the entire school. Hermione, you're the most brilliant person in that room. Anyone who doesn't see that is an idiot. You're going to be wonderful." She hugged him carefully, not wanting to disturb the hair. "Thank you for always making me feel like I'm enough. You're more than enough. You're extraordinary. Now come on. We're going to be late." The ball itself was lavish and overwhelming, and Harry danced with Parvati and genuinely enjoyed himself, which surprised him slightly. But he also found his eyes drifting repeatedly to Hermione on the dance floor with Crumb, his protective instinct snagging on the 17-year-old international athlete dancing with his 13-year-old sister. "You're staring at her," Parvati observed, "making sure she's all right. She looks like she's having a perfectly wonderful time." "She's 13. She's fine, Harry. She's smiling. She's handling herself. Let her have her own experiences." Ron appeared at Harry's elbow during a slow song and grabbed his arm when Harry started to rise. "Don't," he said. "She's fine. Crumb's being a gentleman. I've been watching. Sit down." But he watched for the rest of the evening. Later, in the common room after the ball, Hermione settled into her usual chair by the fire. and Harry dropped into his across from her, and they looked at each other the way they always did after events they needed to debrief. "Did you have a good time?" he asked, keeping his voice carefully neutral. "I did, actually. Victor is very intelligent. He speaks 4 languages, and we had a fascinating conversation about the theoretical applications of advanced transfiguration in professional Quidditch. He thinks about the sport differently from most players. He's genuinely curious about the world. And was he respectful? Harry, are you asking whether you need to hex an international Quidditch star? I'm asking whether he behaved properly. He was a perfect gentleman. We talked, we danced, he walked me back here. That is all." She paused. "I know you were watching. I was being a brother. You were being overprotective. There is a distinction. Harry, I can handle myself. I have been handling myself in complicated situations since I was 6 and accidentally turned my teacher's desk purple because she said something unkind about my homework. You do not need to watch over every conversation I have with a boy. I know you can handle yourself. That doesn't mean I have to like watching someone else dance with you." "Get used to it," she said, not unkindly. "I am planning to have a life." "I know," he said. "Doesn't mean I'll like it." She smiled at him with the specific smile she reserved for when he was being extremely Harry about something. "You're an excellent brother, even when you're annoying." The second task required each champion to retrieve something precious from the bottom of the lake. Harry discovered with a cold, lurching horror that his something precious was Hermione, who had been placed in a magically induced sleep and tied to a post in the Merpeople's village 40 feet underwater. "They took Hermione," he told Ron, pale with it. "They took my sister and put her at the bottom of a lake. She'll be perfectly fine. The magic keeps the hostages completely safe. It's part of the task. She's at the bottom of a lake, Ron. You'll get her. That's the whole point." Harry used gillyweed to breathe underwater, swam to the Merpeople's village, found Hermione tied to her post alongside the other hostages, and cut her free immediately. Then he noticed that Fleur Delacour had not arrived, and her younger sister Gabrielle was still there, 8 years old, tied and sleeping. Harry freed her too, even though it cost him time, even though it meant arriving last, and scoring poorly on speed. He could not leave a child at the bottom of a lake. When Hermione surfaced and coughed water and looked around in the bewildered way of someone waking from a deep sleep, Harry was right beside her. "What happened?" she asked. "You were my precious thing. They put you in the lake for me to rescue." She blinked at him. "Of course I was. Who else would they choose? I'm just glad you're safe. I was never in real danger. The magic protected all the hostages the whole time. You didn't need to rush. I'm always going to come for you, even when you don't technically need rescuing. That's very you. That's very us. We rescue each other. That's the arrangement." The third task was the maze. Harry and Cedric Diggory reached the Triwizard Cup together at the center, grabbed it simultaneously, and were transported by Portkey to a graveyard in Little Hangleton where nothing was right and everything was wrong. Peter Pettigrew was there. The thing he was carrying was Voldemort. Harry was bound to a headstone while a ritual was performed, his blood taken by force, and Voldemort rose from the cauldron fully formed and terrible, red-eyed and snake-like, a thing that had been waiting for this moment for 14 years. Cedric was killed, simply, casually, as an afterthought. Here to die in your place, Wormtail, nothing more. Harry dueled Voldemort and was outmatched in every way, except for the fact that his wand and Voldemort's were brothers, and when their spells connected, the effect called Priori Incantatem occurred. A golden cage of light spinning between them, and from within it came echoes of Voldemort's victims. An old man, Bertha Jorkins, Cedric, who told Harry to hold on and take his body back. And finally, James and Lily Potter, pale and luminous, and looking at their son with an expression Harry had no name for. "Your father and I are so proud of you," his mother said. Her voice was exactly as he had heard it under the Dementor's cold, but without the despair. "Now run. Get to the cup. Get back." Harry ran. He grabbed Cedric's body and the cup, and the portkey activated, and he landed on the Hogwarts grounds to cheering crowds who thought he had won, and then saw Cedric, and the cheering became silence, and then screaming. He's back. Harry gasped to Dumbledore, barely able to form the words. Voldemort's back. The aftermath was chaos. The Ministry denied everything. The Daily Prophet ran articles calling Harry an attention-seeking liar, a troubled teenager with a history of dangerous behavior, a boy who had let the pressure of fame warp his perception of reality. The wizarding world fractured between those who believed him and those who found disbelief more comfortable. Through all of it, Hermione was his constant. When he woke from nightmares about Cedric, she was there, having heard him through the castle walls in whatever way she always heard him when he needed her. When he could not eat, she sat with him and did not comment and did not push, just stayed until he managed something. When the prophet published another article calling him a liar, she sat down at the breakfast table and wrote a rebuttal in her neat, precise hand that she sent to the editor and to the Minister for Magic, and to Dumbledore and to anyone else she thought might benefit from the facts presented in their correct order. "I believe you," she said one evening, very simply. "I always will. If you say you saw Voldemort, then you saw him. That's the end of the discussion. The whole world thinks I'm lying. The whole world is wrong about things more often than people like to admit. We deal with it together. We prepare for what's coming. That is what we do. What if I'm wrong?" "You're not wrong, Harry. I know you. You don't lie about important things." She paused. "And if somehow against all evidence you were wrong, then you are still the most reliable, most honest person I have ever known. And one mistake does not change that." Harry looked at his sister across the empty common room and felt the specific gratitude of someone who has been believed when the whole world was pointing the other direction. "Thank you," he said. "Don't thank me. Just help me work out how we prepare for a war." Fifth year arrived with Dolores Umbridge, and Harry and Hermione both understood within the first 10 minutes of her opening lesson that this was going to be a different kind of problem from anything they had faced before. Not a monster in a chamber or a dark wizard in a graveyard. Something subtler, and in some ways more dangerous, the weaponization of authority itself. Umbridge had been appointed Defense Against the Dark Arts teacher by the Ministry specifically to prevent any mention of Voldemort's return reaching the students. Her classroom was pink and her voice was sweet, and her agenda was the systematic dismantling of any preparation the students of Hogwarts might receive for a war that she intended to pretend was not coming. "The Ministry has determined that defensive practical magic is unnecessary," she said during that first lesson, her smile never quite reaching her eyes. "You are perfectly safe. There is no Dark Lord. Therefore, we will study theory." Hermione's hand went up. "Professor, with respect, theory without practical application is incomplete education. How can we defend ourselves if we never practice defensive spells?" "Defend yourselves against what, Miss Granger?" "There are no threats. Dark creatures, hostile magic, accidents with volatile spells. Defensive magic isn't only relevant when Dark Lords exist. It's basic safety." 5 points from Gryffindor for arguing with a teacher. After class, Hermione was not upset. She was thinking, which was in some ways more worrying. "She is going to get people killed," she said. "No practical defense training in a world where Voldemort has just returned. That is not incompetence. That is deliberate sabotage dressed up as policy. What do? We teach ourselves. We form a group, students who want real training, from all houses, taught properly outside official channels." She paused. "It's against school rules." "So is time travel. We did that when it was necessary." "Exactly. Sometimes rules need breaking, Harry. This is one of those times. But we do it carefully. We do it well. And you teach because you have actual combat experience that no one in that school can match." Thus, Dumbledore's army was born in a back room of the Hogshead pub on a drizzly October afternoon, with a group of students from 5 houses who had all independently reached the conclusion that something was deeply wrong with their defense education and were willing to do something about it. Harry taught. It was strange and then natural, standing in the room of requirement that Hermione had found in the 7th floor corridor, demonstrating spells he had learned in conditions most of these students could barely imagine. Stunning spells and shield charms and disarming hexes, and eventually, for the most advanced members, the Patronus charm. Hermione organized everything else. She designed the curriculum, drawing on her encyclopedic knowledge of defensive theory to create a structured progression from basic to advanced. She scheduled sessions, managed the sign-up sheet with a self-updating charm she invented herself, and developed a security measure for the membership list that she was quietly proud of. She tracked each student's progress with careful notes and adjusted the teaching approach when someone was struggling. They worked together with the seamless efficiency of people who have been solving problems jointly for over a decade. "You finish each other's explanations," Neville observed after one session, looking between them with the expression of someone noticing something they have seen many times but only just named. "It's like you're one teacher with two bodies." "We've been doing this since we were toddlers," Hermione said. "It's just how we work. It's slightly unnerving. We've been told that before." Umbridge hunted them. She created an inquisitorial squad of students who reported rule violations, banned student organizations, and in October gave herself powers to inspect and dismiss teachers. She was dismantling the school systematically, stripping out anything that might give students the independence of mind to see through her. Harry and Hermione both recognized the pattern, because Hermione had read enough history to know what it looked like when institutions were captured from within by people who needed compliance more than competence. They were careful. They moved the DA meeting locations. They used the enchanted list. They kept the membership tight. But in February, they were betrayed. The membership list obtained by a student whose mother worked at the ministry and whose loyalty turned out to be to her family rather than to the group. Umbridge raided the meeting with ministry officials, and the satisfaction of someone who has been waiting for this moment and intends to enjoy it. "An illegal student organization," she said, her smile at its widest and most unpleasant. "Teaching unauthorized magic, this is grounds for expulsion." Harry stepped forward immediately. "I organized this. It was my idea. Hermione helped with the logistics, but this was mine. If you're expelling anyone, expel me." "No," Hermione said, stepping forward to stand beside him without hesitation. "We organized it together. You cannot punish Harry without punishing me. We made every decision jointly." "How remarkably loyal," Umbridge said. "The Potter siblings protecting each other. Unfortunately, you are both guilty." Dumbledore intervened, taking responsibility for the group and thereby protecting all the students. He departed the school rather than be arrested, with a speed and flair that suggested he had planned for this contingency and found it mildly amusing, and Umbridge became headmistress. What followed was the worst period either of them had experienced at Hogwarts. Umbridge targeted Harry and Hermione specifically, as though she understood instinctively that they were the center of whatever resistance remained and that breaking them would break the rest. She assigned them detentions that used a blood quill, a dark artifact that carved words into the flesh of the writer's hand as they wrote, words that scarred. The first time Hermione saw the words carved into Harry's hand, she went very still, in a way that meant she was suppressing something large. "She's torturing you," she said. "That device is a dark artifact. Its use on students is illegal under 6 different ministry statutes, 2 of which were specifically passed in response to documented abuse cases in the 1800s. She knows this. There's nothing we can do right now. She's protected by Fudge. There is always something we can do. We document everything, every detention, every scar, every discrepancy between her stated rules and the actual law. When this ends, and it will end, we will have the evidence to ensure she is held accountable. We survive this properly. We don't react in ways that give her more power over us." Her own detention produced the words, "I must not question authority," in the back of her hand. When Harry saw them, his eyes went dangerous. "I'm going to—" "No," Hermione said firmly. "We are going to be strategic. We are going to survive this, gather evidence, and ensure she faces justice properly and permanently. Losing control now hands her exactly what she wants. You're always so rational. One of us has to be. You're the chaos, I'm the logic. Our chaos, remember?" Harry looked at her scarred hand and then at his own. "Our chaos," he agreed. In June, Harry had a vision. He saw Sirius in the Department of Mysteries, a long, cool corridor of doors, and Sirius was there and in pain, and Harry felt the pull of it like a hook in his sternum. The absolute imperative to go immediately. Hermione stopped him on the stairs before he had reached the common room door. "Verify first," she said. "Sirius is—" "Verify first. Harry, Voldemort is in your head. You know this because Dumbledore has told you, Snape has told you during those occlumency sessions, and every piece of evidence we have about the Scar connection supports it. Before you do anything, we verify that this vision is real. He could be dying right now while we're standing here. Or Voldemort is showing you what he wants you to see in order to get you to the Department of Mysteries. Those are not equal possibilities. We verify first. If Sirius is genuinely in danger, we will help him. If this is a trap, we will not walk into it." They broke into Umbridge's office and used the fireplace to contact Grimmauld Place. Sirius answered, safe and confused and slightly annoyed at being woken. "I'm fine, Harry. Why would I be at the Ministry? What's happened?" "Voldemort showed me a vision of you being tortured there. Then, it's a trap. Stay at Hogwarts." Hermione was right. She had been right before Harry had even finished forming the argument against her. He held on to that thought on the long walk back from Umbridge's office. They contacted the Order, who investigated the Department of Mysteries and found it empty. Just a room with locked doors and a prophecy with Harry's name on it. Bait perfectly laid for a boy who loved his godfather and could be counted on to act before thinking if the right pressure was applied. "Your caution saved lives today," Dumbledore told them afterward. "Voldemort intended to lure you there. Your wisdom in verifying prevented that. You listened to her. That is its own form of wisdom, and rarer than you might think." That summer, the Ministry finally ran out of road. Voldemort appeared publicly in the atrium of the Ministry of Magic and dueled Dumbledore in front of witnesses who could no longer pretend they had seen nothing. Fudge was replaced. Umbridge was removed from Hogwarts. Her records of abuses documented in enough detail by Harry and Hermione's careful notes to ensure she faced a disciplinary hearing that was not, for once, rigged in advance. The wizarding world believed Harry now, a year too late, and at the cost of a year's preparation they could not get back. "We need to get ready," Hermione said that summer, sitting with Harry in the garden in Crawley, with the evening coming in warm and golden around them. "Really ready, not school-level defensive magic. We need to understand what an actual war looks like, the tactics, the casualties, the things they don't teach you. I know, people we know, families we've met, they lost people. They lost everything. We are not prepared for that. Then we prepare. Together, like we always do." "Together," Hermione agreed. But her voice carried something it had not carried before, a weight that had not been there when they were children, planning tree houses and practicing levitation in their bedroom. They were not children anymore, and the thing coming toward them was not a troll or a basilisk. It was a war, and they both knew it. Sixth year brought Professor Slughorn and private lessons with Dumbledore and the word Horcrux, which rearranged Harry's understanding of the entire situation into something more terrible and more specific. Dumbledore explained it with both Harry and Hermione present. Harry had asked for Hermione to be there, and Dumbledore had agreed without question, which Harry suspected meant he had been expecting the request. Voldemort had split his soul into 7 pieces and hidden them in objects, making himself functionally immortal. The pieces had to be found and destroyed before Voldemort could be killed permanently. 2 had already been dealt with. 5 remained. "We'll do it," Harry said immediately. "Harry, this isn't your burden alone to carry." "I'm not carrying it alone. Hermione and I will do it together." Hermione nodded. "Where do we start?" They spent 6th year working with Dumbledore on the Horcrux hunt, making cautious progress through a problem with very few handholds and a great deal of darkness. They retrieved the locket from a seaside cave guarded by Inferi, Hermione holding the perimeter with a wall of fire while Harry pulled Dumbledore to safety through water that had hands. Dumbledore's health continued to decline. The curse from the destroyed ring was killing him slowly. Its progress contained but not stopped by everything Snape could do. In May, he called them both to his office and told them quietly that he had perhaps 3 months left. "When I am gone, you must continue the hunt. There are 4 Horcruxes remaining, the cup, the diadem, the snake, and one I have not yet identified. You are more capable than you know. You're not going anywhere," Harry said. I am dying, Harry. The curse is not reversible, but you and Hermione together, with the knowledge you have now and the bond you have always had, can finish this. I am certain of it. Dumbledore died in June. Snape killed him on the astronomy tower, though they would learn only much later that it had been planned between them, a mercy killing that preserved Snape's cover as a spy at the cost of everything else. At the funeral, Harry and Hermione stood side by side holding hands, both crying without trying to hide it. "We finish this," Harry said. "We find the Horcruxes and we end this war." Together, seventh year did not happen at Hogwarts. Instead, Harry, Hermione and Ron went into hiding and hunted Horcruxes across Britain, which was grueling, cold, frightening work conducted largely in forest clearings and borrowed houses with very little food and the constant awareness that they were being hunted in return. They broke into the Ministry of Magic disguised as ministry officials and retrieved a stolen Horcrux from under the nose of Voldemort's regime. They infiltrated Gringotts on the back of a dragon that had never seen daylight and barely escaped with their lives and Hufflepuff's cup. They moved through an increasingly dark and hostile world, learning its new contours, finding safe houses, staying one step ahead of Death Eaters who were getting closer. The locket Horcrux was the worst part of the waiting. When it was being worn, it whispered, finding the specific fears of whoever had it around their neck and pressing on them with the patient certainty of something that had time to spare. For Ron, it whispered about being unnecessary, about being the third wheel in a partnership that had existed before he arrived and would exist after he left. He left in October, unable to carry the weight of it any longer, and Harry and Hermione were left in a tent in the Forest of Dean, with the rain on the canvas and the locket around Harry's neck. "Tell me what it says to you," Hermione said one night. "It asks me which I would choose," Harry said. "If I had to choose between you and stopping Voldemort, which matters more?" "And what do you tell it?" Harry was quiet for a moment. "I'd choose you," he said. "Every time, without question, I would choose you. I'm sorry if that's wrong. I know the prophecy says I'm the only one who can kill him. I know what the stakes are. But if it came down to you or the mission, I would choose you, and I think I'd make that choice again every time I made it." Hermione was silent for a long moment. The rain fell steadily on the tent roof. "I'd choose you too," she said finally. "Over everything. Over the mission. Over doing the right thing. Over the greater good. I would choose you. Every time. Then we're both terrible people." "Or we're human," Hermione said. "Maybe loving each other isn't a weakness. Maybe it's the reason we've survived this long. Maybe love was always the point." Harry destroyed the locket with Gryffindor's sword, which Snape had arranged to appear in the forest pool in what they would later understand was one of many quiet acts of guidance from the man they had spent years misreading. Ron returned, having found his way back by following the Silver Doe Patronus through the dark. The team reassembled and moved forward. Hufflepuff's cup fell at Gringotts. Ravenclaw's diadem fell at Hogwarts, during the battle destroyed by fiendfire in the Room of Requirement, while the castle shook around them. That left Nagini the Snake, who went everywhere with Voldemort and would have to be dealt with last, and one Horcrux that Dumbledore had not identified. It was Hermione who worked it out. She came to Harry in the early hours of the morning before the battle, with her notes in her hand and an expression that told him before she spoke that she already knew this was going to be the hardest thing she had ever said. "The last Horcrux," she said. "Harry, I've been through every piece of evidence we have about the night your parents died. The magical residue Dumbledore described, the nature of the scar, the way the protection embedded itself. And there is only one conclusion that fits all the data. Tell me, you are the last Horcrux. You have been carrying a fragment of Voldemort's soul since you were 15 months old. To destroy it, it has to be destroyed. And the only way to destroy it is to die," Harry said. Hermione put her notes down. She had been holding herself together with both hands, and now she stopped trying to. She put her face in her hands, and her shoulders shook with it. Harry sat beside her and waited. He did not say anything reassuring, because there was nothing reassuring to say. He simply stayed the way she had always stayed for him, because that was the only thing he could offer. When she looked up, her eyes were red, but her face had found something resolute beneath the grief. "There has to be another way. I will research this for as long as we have. I will find every theoretical framework that touches on soul magic, and I will look for a loophole. I need time." "We don't have time, Hermione." "Then tell me I'm wrong. Show me where my reasoning breaks down." He looked at her notes. He looked at the argument laid out in her careful handwriting, evidence and conclusion, and the horrible, elegant logic that connected them. He looked for the flaw and could not find it. "You're not wrong," he said quietly. "I hate this. I know. You're my brother. You're the best person I know. You're my earliest memory and my best friend and the person I would choose over everything. And I am supposed to just let you walk away." Her voice broke on the last words, but she kept going. "I can't do this, Harry. I'm telling you right now that I cannot do this." "You can," he said. "You're the strongest person I know. And Hermione, I need you to promise me something. When it's done, you keep fighting. You help finish it. You make sure this meant something." "Don't ask me to promise that." "I have to. Please." She looked at him for a long time, memorizing him in the way she memorized everything she intended to keep. "I promise," she whispered. "But I hate that you're asking me to. I know. I love you. You know that. I know I love you too. Forever." Forever. He did not tell her when he was going, could not face her a second time, knowing it was the last. He walked into the forbidden forest alone in the small hours before dawn, and he used the resurrection stone that he had found in Dumbledore's first snitch, and his parents came to him in the dark among the trees. "You're nearly there," his mother said. Her face was exactly as he had imagined it. "Does it hurt?" Harry asked. "Dying. Quicker than falling asleep," his father said. He walked forward into Voldemort's cold green light, and his last thought, before the world went white, was that he was sorry, that he was glad, that he would choose it again, that she was going to be all right. He woke in a place that looked like King's Cross, and spoke with Dumbledore, who looked younger and somehow unburdened, and learned that the piece of Voldemort's soul that had been attached to him was gone, destroyed by the killing curse, but that Harry himself had survived again, because Voldemort had used his blood in the resurrection, and Lily's protection lived on in Voldemort's own veins, and so Harry was tethered to life, whether Voldemort intended it or not. He could go back. He chose to go back. He returned to the battle carrying his own apparent death, lying still in Hagrid's arms as Voldemort presented the body to the defenders of Hogwarts, and he waited for his moment, and when it came he stood up. Hermione screamed his name. He heard it from across the chaos of the courtyard, her voice cutting through spellfire and shouting and the crash of falling stonework. And then she was there. She had crossed the battle to reach him. She had him in her arms, and she was sobbing into his shoulder. "You died," she said. "I felt it. I felt you go. I'm here. I'm alive. Don't you ever do that again. Do you hear me? Don't you dare. I'm here, Hermione. I came back." She pulled back and looked at him, her face tear-streaked and furious and incandescent with relief. "You came back. I promised you. I always come back." The final battle was joined. Death Eaters fell or surrendered. Voldemort met Harry in the courtyard for the last time, and this time Harry understood what he had not understood before, that the Elder Wand could not kill its own master, that Voldemort had never truly mastered it, and that the killing curse, when it met Harry's Expelliarmus, rebounded for the second time in 17 years, and Tom Riddle fell for the last time. In the aftermath, in the long quiet that followed the noise, Harry and Hermione sat together in the ruined Great Hall, with Ron beside them, surrounded by people who were crying and laughing and holding each other, and the morning light came through the shattered windows in long pale bars. "We did it," Harry said. He was not sure he believed it yet. "We did it," Hermione confirmed. Her voice was very tired and very steady. "Together, like we always do. I couldn't have done any of this without you. Not the first task, not the second year, not the Department of Mysteries, not last night. None of it. It was always us. You're my courage when I'm too frightened to act," Hermione said. "I'm your logic when you're too brave to think. We're better together than we are apart. We've always known that, since before that. Since Dumbledore found a thread of connection between two children who hadn't even met yet. since your mother's magic recognized something and reached out to it." She paused. "I think she knew, somehow. I think the magic she used was smart enough to know that you'd need someone, and it found me." Harry thought about this. He thought about the golden light sinking into the foundations of a house in Crawley, and Dumbledore standing in a cold November garden, and two children growing up alongside each other who turned out to fit together like the two halves of something that had always been meant to be whole. "That's very like something Dumbledore would have planned," he said. "It's very like something love would do," Hermione replied. "The years after the war were not simple, but they were good. There was rebuilding, political and physical and personal. There were trials and reforms and long arguments in the Wesngamot about the rights of Muggle-born witches and wizards that Hermione threw herself into with the ferocious organized energy she brought to everything that mattered to her. There was grief for Cedric and Fred and Lupin and Tonks and all the others, a grief that did not go away, but that became, over time, something that could be carried." Harry joined the Aurora program, the youngest recruit in 30 years and the only one who passed all 3 practical examinations on his first attempt and the theoretical components on his third. He married Ginny Weasley 3 years after the war in a ceremony in the Burrow Garden, and Harry held Ron's hand during the father-daughter dance because Ron had been crying since the welcome speech. Hermione married Ron the following year, which surprised no one who had been paying attention. Ron's proposal, she reported to Harry afterward, had involved 3 false starts, a knocked-over candle, and a lengthy detour into whether the restaurant's bread service was taking too long, after which he had simply said that he had loved her for years and couldn't imagine not spending the rest of his life being slightly baffled by her, and she had said yes before he finished the sentence. He asked if you'd approve. She told Harry. "What did you say?" "I told him you'd been hoping for it since 4th year. I told him that myself. He refused to believe me." "He's very Ron," Hermione said affectionately. Children arrived, and with them a new version of the chaos Harry and Hermione had always generated, now with reinforcements. James Sirius Potter arrived first, with his grandfather's face and his father's inability to sit still. Then Albus Severus, quieter, more watchful, more Hermione than Harry in his approach to the world. Then Lily Luna, who combined Harry's instinct and Hermione's precision into something that their combined parenting could only attempt to keep up with. Rose Granger Weasley arrived when Hermione was 24, small and fierce and already correcting the healer's notes in the delivery room, which Hermione swore she could see even at 1 day old. Hugo followed 3 years later, good-natured and broad-shouldered and possessed of Ron's gift for making friends in any room he entered. The two families grew up together in the easy, intermingled way of people who choose to be family regardless of geography or occasion. Sunday dinners that started at 3 and ended at 10. Summers in Crawley with Dan and Emma, who had aged gracefully into people who regarded the magical world with the same analytical affection they had brought to it the night Dumbledore knocked on their door. Christmases that required 3 tables pushed together, and always resulted in at least one person attempting to summon the dessert from the kitchen. 19 years after the battle, on the 1st of September, Harry and Hermione stood on platform 9 3/4, side by side, and watched their children prepare to board the Hogwarts Express. James was going for his first year. He stood with his trunk and his owl, and the nervous confidence of someone who has heard so many stories about a place that the real thing feels both familiar and entirely new. Albus and Lily were there to see him off, too young to go yet, faces pressed to the barrier as though they could absorb Hogwarts through proximity. Rose was going for her first year too, standing straight with her mother's posture and her father's grin, already deep in conversation with Albus about what the sorting would be like, already managing him even at age 11 in a way that made Hermione press her lips together to hide a smile. "Ready?" Harry asked James. "Ready," James said. "Though I'm nervous. What if I'm not in Gryffindor?" "Then you'll be in whichever house suits you best," Hermione said. "Houses are just different paths to the same place, becoming a witch or wizard of genuine character. But you and Dad were both Gryffindors," James pointed out. "I was almost a Ravenclaw," Hermione admitted. "The Hat thought about it for quite some time. I chose Gryffindor because your father was there. because being with him mattered more to me than being in the theoretically optimal house. James stared at her. You chose your house based on Uncle Harry. He's not just your uncle, Hermione said. He's my brother. He's the first person who ever called me mine when he was 15 months old and I was 2 years and 4 months old. And I didn't yet have the words for what he was to me, but I understood the concept perfectly. Of course, I chose to be in his house. James looked at Harry. Is that weird? It's the best decision she ever made, Harry said simply. Besides marrying Ron, Hermione added. Obviously, Harry agreed, though those two things aren't unrelated, because if she'd been in Ravenclaw, she might not have known Ron well enough to… Harry. Right, yes, unrelated. Rose tugged on her mother's sleeve. Mum, was it really the right choice? Choosing a house for someone else, Hermione considered her daughter with the seriousness that Rose's questions always deserved. I didn't choose for someone else. I chose for us, because the thing I had learned by 11, the thing your father taught me without either of us realizing it was being taught, is that some partnerships matter more than individual optimization. That being in the right place is sometimes less important than being in the right place with the right person. That sounds like something Professor Dumbledore would have said, Rose said. It is rather, Hermione agreed. He was occasionally right about things. The whistle blew, the doors opened, the great organized chaos of departure began. Trunks and owls and last hugs and instructions shouted over shoulders, and then the children were on the train, and the windows were going past, and James had found a compartment and was waving, and then the train rounded the bend, and they were gone. Harry and Hermione stood together on the platform in the gradually dispersing crowd and listened to the silence left behind. I remember standing here, Harry said. First time. Watching you on the platform from the window. Thinking I wished you were with me. I remember watching you go, Hermione said, standing on the platform thinking 2 years felt like an extremely long time, and also that I should be on that train. You should have been. We got there in the end. The platform was almost empty now. Ron and Ginny were talking nearby, Ron's arm around Ginny's shoulders, both of them doing the complicated emotional arithmetic of a parent who has just watched their child leave for the first time and is trying to decide which feeling is loudest. Do you ever regret it? Hermione asked. How our lives turned out. The fighting, the war, the parts where we nearly died. Harry thought about this properly, the way the question deserved. He thought about a graveyard in Little Hangleton, and a tent in the Forest of Dean, and the forest itself at dawn with the resurrection stone in his hand. He thought about every moment it could have ended differently and hadn't. No, he said finally, because every single part of it brought us here. To standing on this platform with our children on that train, knowing we built that world together, the world where Muggleborns are treated as equals and Dark Lords are history, and the Ministry is run, in several key departments, by people who actually know what they're doing. He paused. Well, mostly. Mostly, Hermione agreed. There's still significant room for institutional improvement. There is. And you're going to achieve it. We're going to achieve it. You have an alarming number of people at the Ministry who will do almost anything you ask. That's embarrassing. It's useful. I've decided to think of it as useful. She looked at him sideways. Harry, Hermione, thank you for being my brother, for choosing me back every day for 29 years, for being my courage when I needed it, and my chaos when I needed that too, for coming back in the forest. Her voice was steady, but her eyes were bright. I know you had to. I know the magic gave you the choice, but you came back, and I have never once taken that for granted. Harry looked at his sister, this woman who had been the other half of his childhood and the backbone of his best work and the constant at the center of everything, who had at 2 years old looked at a baby with a lightning scar and said mine, and had meant it every day since. I came back because I promised you, he said, and because I couldn't imagine a world I'd built without you in it, and because you're my happiest memory and the reason my Patronus works, and the person I'd choose every single time, Hermione, every time without question. She put her arm through his the way she had since they were children. You're mine too. All of those things. You always have been. They stood together on the empty platform in the morning light, listening to the last echoes of the train fade south toward Scotland, toward a castle full of magic and history, and their children just beginning their own part of the story. "Ready to go home?" Ron called across the platform. Harry and Hermione looked at each other. "We're already home," Harry said. "Some bonds are not forged by blood. Some bonds are forged by choice, by a thread of gold through the wreckage of a burned-out house, by an old wizard who believed that love freely given was the most powerful magic in the world, by a 2-year-old girl who looked at a baby she had never seen before and claimed him without hesitation. Those bonds do not break. They deepen. They hold the weight of decades and grief and war and joy and the ordinary daily choosing of each other, year after year after year. They hold forever, and they always will."